Before we go any further, I want to slow things down for a moment. You've probably already felt it, that tension between being capable and being consistently overloaded. Not lazy, not behind, just carrying too much in your head. That's where part one begins. What this part is really about, part one is called foundations for a reason. Because before we talk about tools, workflows, or systems, we have to talk about how we think. Not how we wish we thought, not how productivity culture says we should think, but how human minds actually work in a noisy, tool-saturated world. Most people assume the problem is discipline or focus or motivation, and it's just not. The real problem is that we're trying to run modern lives on mental operating systems that were never designed for this much input. Tabs, notifications, meetings, ideas that surface and vanish before we can do anything with them. Part one is about naming that problem clearly, without blaming ourselves for it. What you'll learn in this section, in this part of the audiobook, will lay this groundwork for everything that follows. You'll hear about why growth doesn't come from breakthroughs, but from loops. Why your best thinking rarely happens in your head alone. Why external systems aren't a weakness, they're how thinking actually works. And why small, repeatable improvements beat intensity every time. This isn't theory for theory's sake. These ideas come from cognitive science, behavioral psychology, and lived experience, tested in real work, real conversations, and real life. One important note before you continue, you don't need to remember everything you hear here. You don't need to agree with everything either. If something resonates, pause. If something irritates you, pause. That reaction is data. Part one isn't about asking you to change anything yet. It's about asking you to notice. In this next chapter, we'll start a simple question. What is Digital Kaizen really? Not a buzzword, not as a framework, but as a way to keep your real thinking from disappearing in all the noise. Let's begin. Preface. The fucking bendy part. There's a moment on Tenacious D's first album that cracks me up every time. Jack Black and Kyle Gass are bickering over who wrote a song, and Jack says, "I wrote this part." Kyle fires back, "You didn't write this part." Jack doubles down, "Yeah, I did. The fucking bendy part." Next song. That moment's been living rent-free in my head ever since a recent conversation with my wife. I had this shit-eating grin as I handed her my phone. I just finished the introduction and first chapter of this book, or at least what I thought was the book. She started reading, and I could tell I had something. She wasn't skimming, she was dialed in, focused. Then she hit me with it. "You didn't write this." I laughed. "What the fuck do you mean I didn't write this?" "It's obviously AI written. It's too eloquent to be you." Now keep in mind, I did write it. Kind of. I spent hours feeding prompts into different GPT models, fine-tuning the voice, dialoguing, reworking sections. I did the fucking bendy part. But like most things my wife says, don't tell her I said this, she was right. It didn't sound like me, not really. It was clean, too clean. It was missing the mess, the sarcasm, the scratches, the humanity, the actual voice that shows up when I talk to real people in real life. So I tossed that version and started over, not from scratch, but from the gut. Here's the reality you'll uncover in these pages. This isn't about black and white rules or clean lines. This is about the gray, the bendy parts, that tension between what's real and what's assisted, between human craftsmanship and digital acceleration, between doing it solo and collaborating with machines that are no longer just tools, but part of our workflows, our creativity, and yeah, even our thinking. Some people call that lazy. I call it efficient. And if I'm being bold, I'll go further. It's not just about saving time or being productive. It's about evolution. Growth, progress, AI isn't replacing us. It's a tool. Like fire, like the wheel, like the printing press, like the internet. It's just the next iteration in a long lineage of tools that help humanity not just do more, but be more. So, yeah, this book was written with help from AI, but that doesn't make it less human. If anything, it made me work harder to make it more human. This is my voice, my clients' stories, my systems, my scars, bendy parts and all. Prologue. Some people treat technology like a harmless pastime. Others trip over it in school or at work. Me, it was coursing through my veins long before I knew what code meant. I didn't discover tech. Tech discovered me deep in the humming shadows of a server room hidden beneath a hospital, where my mother by day summoned programs and by night steel doors locked away the dead. There was no childhood full of sleek touchscreens or gadgets that just worked. Instead, I grew up under the glow of CRT monitors, the green cursor blinking like an impatient pulse, surrounded by towers of brittle punch cards that whispered ancient commands in a tongue I burned to decode. My mom wasn't merely cool, she was a mainframe sorceress in a world where programming demanded ruthless precision, unrelenting patience, and perfect punch holes. She'd lug home cardboard boxes of cards, their edges soft from countless runs, each card a cryptic rune in a system few remembered. She taught me their magic with hushed awe, the same reverence a priest might reserve for a relic. I cupped them in my hands like holy artifacts, traced their faded holes as if reading a map to buried treasure. When I was 7, I got my first Commodore 64. While other kids raced bikes down sunlit streets, I sat cross-legged in my room, fingers dancing over the keys. 10 print Hello World, 20 go to 10, 30 run, again and again watching those words crawl across the screen. Not because I craved the endless loop, but because I knew I had bent the machine to my will. I spoke and it obeyed. By middle school, I had built a BBS on a 2400 baud modem. Those shrill dial-up tones were secret handshakes in the dark. I called it my digital treehouse, but in truth, it was a smuggler's den. We traded cracked games, freaking codes, shards of forbidden knowledge. This wasn't teenage rebellion. It was raw curiosity turned kinetic, a hunger for every crack in the digital world. Then I found Neuromancer. William Gibson didn't predict the future. He painted what I was already living. I hammered my bed into a coffin pod shrine so I could crawl inside and dream I was Case, a console cowboy riding fractal highways of neon data. Reading Cyberpunk wasn't enough. I had to fuse it to my nervous system, taste its electric air. Even now, I can hear it, the robot janitors in the hospital corridors, their wheels squeaking across linoleum like they're scrubbing for ghosts or something yet to come. And I still see the Commodore's red LED glow, not cold light, but the hearth of a newborn world. Years later, I recognize what those moments taught me. True iteration rarely arrives in neat software updates. Progress usually backslides first, stuttering with glitches. The most powerful systems often begin not with perfect clarity, but with crackling static. This is where Digital Kaizen was born, in that static, in the low hum of the basement, in the messy, bendy nexus where memory and machines bleed into one another. You don't choose to become a digital obsessive. It chooses you. Part 1, Foundations. Chapter 1. What is Digital Kaizen? A human AI system for growth built on voice, clarity, and iteration. Let's begin with a feeling. You open your phone, there's a flood, tabs, text, tasks, tools, notifications. You swipe, skim, save something to read later, knowing you never will. The productivity apps aren't helping. If anything, they've become another thing to manage, another inbox, another kind of noise. You're getting things done, but are you moving forward? Digital Kaizen is a system for thinking clearly in a noisy world. It uses short voice notes, AI tools, and weekly reflection loops to help you surface what matters and adjust without burning out. It's not a productivity hack. It's a practice of iteration, small, intentional improvements over time, using your own thoughts as the raw material. There's a moment when you say something out loud, half-formed, raw, unfiltered, and you realize that was real. That was the thing. And then it vanishes. Digital Kaizen is how we keep that thing, not to control it, not to systematize your soul, but to meet yourself more clearly, more consistently, more kindly. This isn't about doing more, it's about thinking better. A new operating system for the modern mind. Digital Kaizen is a voice-first, AI-supported system for continuous personal growth. It weaves together insights from cognitive science, behavioral psychology, and technological innovation into one simple but powerful loop. The ingredients: speak what matters when it matters. Store it where it can work for you. Reflect and iterate in small, sustainable cycles. In a world where everything is screaming for your attention, this system whispers, let's make this easier. Let's make this yours. The definition, put simply: Digital Kaizen is a feedback loop for your thoughts, powered by your voice, guided by AI, and refined by consistent 1% improvements. It combines externalized thinking, speak it so you don't forget it; second brain principles, organize it so it's useful later; Kaizen methodology, evolve it a little at a time. The result is a system that feels alive. It doesn't overwhelm you, it grows with you. Here's how it works. At its core, Digital Kaizen runs on a 5-part loop: capture what matters, voice memos, meeting transcripts, stream of consciousness journaling; reflect with AI, summarize, highlight, pull patterns; revisit weekly, zoom out, spot themes; adjust lightly, make the next move 1% smarter; repeat without needing a new app or a new you. This loop doesn't require perfection. It thrives on presence. The 3 pillars of Digital Kaizen. Each part of this system rests on one of 3 science-backed ideas. Individually, they're powerful. Together, they become transformative. 1. The extended mind. Think wider, not harder. Inspired by the work of Annie Murphy Pohl, Clark and Chalmers, and Barbara Tversky, this principle teaches us something counterintuitive. Your best thinking doesn't happen in your brain. It happens with the world around you. What this means: you think better when you move, walking, meetings, pacing, gestures. Your environment shapes your cognition. Cluttered desk equals cluttered mind. You remember more in dialogue, transactive memory, and relationships. In Digital Kaizen, this shows up in practices like recording voice notes while walking, designing visual spaces for problem solving, talking through your thoughts before writing them down. Your workspace becomes a collaborator. Your body becomes a tool. Your relationships become memory banks. 2. The second brain. Your brain is for ideas, not storage. Most of us are trying to juggle too much in our heads. To-do lists, dreams, deadlines, book ideas, grocery items. You forget the thing your partner said that mattered. You lose the brilliant idea from the shower. That's not a character flaw, it's a memory limit. A second brain, popularized by Tiago Forte, is an external system that captures, organizes, and resurfaces your thinking when you need it most. How it works in Digital Kaizen. Use tools like Notion, Google Docs, or even your CRM to hold ideas. Apply the PARA method: projects, areas, resources, archives, to sort them. Let AI, Fireflies.ai, ChatGPT, Notion AI help you summarize, extract, and link insights. This isn't a digital junk drawer. This is a thinking partner. You don't capture to hoard, you capture to see clearly later. 3. Kaizen, small steps, big shift. Kaizen is the quiet heartbeat of this system, a Japanese word meaning good change. It's the philosophy of continuous, tiny improvements over time. Rather than trying to change your life in one giant leap, Kaizen asks, what's the next smallest move that would feel like progress? Why it works. Tiny steps bypass your brain's resistance. Momentum builds trust faster than motivation. 1% better each day compounds to 37 times growth in a year. Digital Kaizen doesn't ask you to fix your life. It asks you to reflect once a week and tweak your system gently. What makes Digital Kaizen different? You've seen productivity system before. Some promise transformation. Some add 12 new tools to your tech stack. Some feel like they work for 2 weeks. Digital Kaizen is different because it grows with you, not around you. It doesn't require an app, a guru, a perfect setup. It just asks you to loop, speak, reflect, adjust, repeat. And with each loop, you don't just capture more, you become more. What this looks like in real life. Let's break it down. You leave a meeting. Instead of typing notes, you hit record. Client said their biggest fear is retiring too early and not having enough. Mentioned their mom outlived her money. Circle back on long-term care and cash reserves. You upload that to Fireflies.ai. At the end of the week, your AI assistant says, you've mentioned retirement fears and long-term care in 3 conversations. might be a good podcast topic or content piece. You capture the theme, you speak a 60-second voice note on the idea, you use that to guide next week's planning. That's a loop. No dashboard, no friction, just awareness, insight, action. The benefits backed by science. This isn't productivity fluff. Here's what the research shows. Working memory relief, offloading tasks reduces mental clutter and improves focus. Deeper insight, expressing ideas aloud improves retention and creativity. Production effect. Behavioral traction. Small actions are more repeatable and repetition builds momentum. Emotional regulation. Reflecting with AI or journaling reduces cognitive overload and boosts self-awareness. Learning acceleration. Revisiting your own words over time helps spot blind spots and deepen understanding. This system doesn't just make you more productive, it makes you more human. Start small, start now. Don't wait for the right system. Don't wait to organize everything. Don't wait until you feel ready. Here's how to start. Choose one capture method. Voice memos, Avoma, Otter, Fireflies.ai. Speak something real today, a thought, a feeling, a win, a fear. Let AI reflect it back to you. Summarize, extract, rephrase. Do a 5-minute review every Friday. What stuck? What next? Tweak the system just enough to make next week easier. This is Digital Kaizen in action, not an overhaul, a loop. Final thought, you don't need a new you. You need a smarter system. You already have the insight. You already have the experience. You already have the story. What you need is a way to hold it, to reflect it, to grow it without burning out. Digital Kaizen is a system for honoring your thoughts before they disappear and turning them into fuel for what comes next. That's not just strategy, that's wisdom. And it starts with one small voice note. In the next chapter, we'll go from theory to real life, from the what to the how. That's where you'll start to see these ideas in motion through what I call lab loops. My personal field notes on putting Digital Kaizen into practice. Chapter 2, The Loop is the Work. Why real growth is repetitive, not revolutionary. Growth doesn't happen once. It happens again and again. There's a story we're sold about growth, that it arrives in thunderclaps, that it's a dramatic before and after, a new planner, a perfect routine, a lightning bolt of clarity. But you and I know that's not how it actually works. Real change, the kind that lasts, it's not made in breakthroughs, it's made in loops. Not loops like stuck in a rut. Not circles that go nowhere. I'm talking about intentional, repeating rhythms that help you see what's happening and make it better, bit by bit. In Digital Kaizen, the loop isn't what you do after the work. The loop is the work. Why most people miss this? We're conditioned to think in straight lines. Set the goal, do the work, hit the milestone, move on. But that model breaks the second life, throws a curveball, a sick kid, a new fire to put out, a dip in motivation. And just like that, the perfect plan collapses under the pressure of real life. Growth isn't linear, it's cyclical, and cycles by nature return. The loop isn't about doing it once, it's about coming back. With a little more insight, a little more awareness, a little more wisdom. What the loop actually looks like. Let's break it down. This is the Digital Kaizen loop in action. Step 1, capture. You voice a thought while driving home. A tension, a win, a worry, a spark of insight. No need to polish it, just record it. Step 2, store. It lands somewhere simple. A Fireflies.ai transcript, a Notion note, an untagged voice memo. Raw data is fine. Step 3, reflect. At week's end, you ask AI, what stood out in my thoughts this week? Or you read back a note and something clicks that didn't before. Step 4, adjust. You tweak a habit, reframe a goal. Send a message you'd been putting off, small, meaningful moves. Step 5, repeat. And next week, you do it again, but slightly better, slightly wiser. That's the loop. You're not chasing clarity. You're training your system to surface it. The science behind the loop. Let's anchor this in research. And according to behavioral psychologist B.J. Fogg, habit change hinges on tiny, repeatable actions. In his model, behavior equals motivation times ability times prompt. The loop satisfies all three. Motivation, capturing something meaningful in your voice, builds emotional momentum. Ability, The friction is low. You're speaking, not scripting. Prompt. Weekly review rituals serve as natural reminders. This aligns with Kaizen principles, small changes over time that compound. But it also borrows from cognitive offloading research. When you externalize ideas, even messy ones, your brain is free to synthesize, not juggle. And most importantly, it fits within the extended mind model. Thinking isn't trapped in your skull, it lives in your tools, rituals, and returns. Why loops work even when you feel like they're not. Let's be honest, at first the loop might feel underwhelming. You capture a voice memo, summarize it, nothing life-changing happens. That's normal. The loop isn't there to blow your mind. It's there to help you recognize your patterns. But here's the catch. You can't always access the loop when you're in the middle of the chaos. Let me show you what I mean. The loop in a fight. I wasn't a sports guy growing up. I was the kid on the Commodore 64, building bulletin boards and messing with BASIC, not playing football. But at 45, I started training in jiu-jitsu, and eventually I competed. There's this illusion people have, especially guys, that a fight is about toughness or some primal swagger. The truth? It feels more like a car crash. My first tournament was a total system shock. My legs were jelly from adrenaline. My vision tunneled. The mat was loud, coaches yelling, bodies hitting canvas, my own breathing filling my ears. A guy nearly 200 pounds was pressing down on me. I wasn't strategizing, I was surviving. From the edge of the mat, my friend Arturo was yelling, "He's doing it again! Why are you doing that?" He was talking about a habit, a specific mistake I had made repeatedly in training, something we'd gone over, something I knew I needed to stop doing. But in the moment, I couldn't see it. I couldn't hear him. I couldn't change it. That's what stress does. It shrinks your field of awareness. You don't rise to your plan, you fall to your patterns. And in that moment, I couldn't access the loop. But later, after the crash, I could. That's when I saw it clearly. This is what I do under pressure. This is my default. That's the power of the loop. Not when you're in the mess, but when you return to it. The post-fight analysis, the film review, the breath in the notebook, and the quiet rewatch where something finally clicks. Digital Kaizen is built for that moment, to catch the thing you always do and help you reroute it before it happens again. Lab loop. First tournament, falling to my pattern. This was one of the first times I realized how hard it is to access the loop in real time, but how essential it is to return to it. When I reviewed that fight with Arturo later, I saw the pattern clearly. This is why I capture what I can and come back to it with fresh eyes. That's the loop. You're not chasing the aha. That's why the loop matters. You're not chasing epiphanies, you're cultivating loop intelligence, the ability to recognize your own signals faster. You're building self-pattern recognition. And that's the kind of wisdom that holds when things get messy. Real wisdom is pattern recognition. Let me ground this in a personal story. Every morning I drive my son to school, same stretch of road, same bottleneck at the freeway ramp, and every morning I watch drivers pile into the left lane, only to get stuck waiting. But I've been down this road before. I go right early, I merge ahead of the jam. It's not faster because I'm smarter. It's faster because I've looped through the same problem enough times to recognize it and solve it sooner. That's wisdom, not the flashy kind, the real kind. Wisdom is high-level pattern recognition. It's seeing what usually happens and choosing a better move before it costs you. And here's the kicker. That same logic applies to your goals, your productivity, your relationships, your burnout cycles. How this shows up in my work. As a financial advisor, I've looped through the same decision patterns with hundreds of clients. University employees nearing retirement, public sector workers balancing pensions and Social Security, people managing the weight of their parents' aging and their kids' futures. I've seen the financial bottlenecks people hit over and over again, misunderstanding TRS survivor benefits, delaying Roth conversions until it's too late, ignoring IRMAA implications, overestimating Medicare coverage, making decisions from fear instead of clarity. And because I've seen these loops, I don't guess anymore. I guide, not from theory, but from repetition, from lived pattern, from wisdom earned, not assumed. That's the same path this system can give you, no matter your profession. Why the loop beats the breakthrough? Most people think growth looks like this. set a goal, take big action, crush it, move on. But life rarely honors that narrative. And instead, it throws curveballs, delays, resistance, ambiguity. That's where the loop shines because it's not about volume, it's about return. Return to the insight, return to the moment, return to the system. And each time you return, you see a little more. The hidden benefit: looping builds self-trust. There's something subtle that happens when you stick with the loop. You start trusting your system. You realize your thoughts are worth capturing. Your ideas are worth reviewing. Your instincts are pointing to patterns. Your decisions are grounded in more than guesswork. In time, your second brain becomes a reflection of who you are becoming. And your AI tools don't feel like gadgets. They feel like mirrors, sharpening, distilling, reminding. The loops that don't have dollar signs. You'd think that in a book like this, the business hacks or productivity gains would be the headline moments. But for me, the biggest shifts haven't been financial. They've been emotional. It started showing up during my weekly Kaizen review. One Friday, the system flagged a pattern. You've mentioned walks with Alistair and Heather 3 times this week. I hadn't thought much of it, but seeing it written out like that, across time, with weight, it hit different. These weren't just steps or calendar blocks. They were connection moments, time to bond, time to breathe, time to actually be with the people who matter most to me. I hadn't seen it because I wasn't looking for it. And that's the thing about reflection loops. They surface the obvious once you've forgotten to pay attention to it. Now, I've started using BAI to record more of my personal life, not just meetings, not just marketing content, but the small stuff. Family chats, impromptu conversations in the car, morning banter in the kitchen. I'm not scripting it. I'm not even hitting record. It just listens. And sometimes in the summaries, it pulls out something beautiful, something that makes me laugh or pause or realize that a silly moment with my son was actually the highlight of the day. These loops, they don't show up in spreadsheets, but they do shape my well-being. And honestly, they might matter more than anything else. Try this, a loop in practice. Let's make this real. Try this one loop ritual this week. Capture a voice memo after a client call, workout, or even a tough conversation. Just 1 minute. Store it somewhere you can find later. Notion, Descript, even your email inbox. Reflect on it Friday. Use GPT or fireflies.ai and ask, what's the core theme here? What did I not notice in the moment? Adjust one thing based on that reflection. Repeat next week. That's it. No overhaul, no setup, just one small loop. Tools that support the loop. Here are some tools that enhance each step of the loop. Don't overbuild, don't overthink. Use what fits. Improve as you go. That's the Kaizen way. Final thought, the loop is how you grow. The voice memo you record today might unlock a decision you make next month. The theme you notice next week might save you from repeating a mistake next year. This isn't about hacking your life. It's about knowing yourself well enough to shape it intentionally. The loop doesn't just track progress. It creates it, and the best part, it's already in motion. You just have to return. Introducing lab loops. You've seen me walk through a few stories in this chapter. Jiu-jitsu, client planning, even morning drives with my son. Each of those moments is a loop. Starting in the next chapter, I'm going to call those moments out more directly with lab loops. These are my field notes from using this system in real life. No theory, no fluff, just how this plays out when it's messy, emotional, and unfolding in real time. I hope you'll see pieces of yourself in them, or maybe even be inspired to start your own. Chapter 3, the 3 pillars: extended mind, second brain, Kaizen. In a world addicted to speed, notifications, and trying to do everything at once, the real advantage isn't hustle, it's clarity. We don't need more tools. We need better thinking. We don't need more time. We need better structure. That's what Digital Kaizen offers, not as a hack, but as a system grounded in 3 simple, powerful ideas. Think of them as pillars or lenses, 3 ways to work with your mind instead of against it. And if you understand these, you won't just use the Digital Kaizen system. You'll live inside it. Why these pillars? I've read a lot of self-help, motivational, and business books over the years, probably listened to even more, on tape, CD, audio, you name it. And honestly, I've forgotten most of it. Not because it wasn't smart, not because it wasn't useful, but because it didn't stick. Except these. The principles behind Kaizen, the extended mind, and the second brain, those have lingered, they've lasted. Kaizen showed up early in my life, even before I had language for it. That idea of steady, repeatable improvement, it embedded itself in how I work, how I adapt, how I course correct. The other two bubbled up later, when my tools started catching up to my mind. I read Annie Murphy Paul's The Extended Mind, and something clicked. Same with Tiago Forte's Second Brain. But honestly, at first they were just ideas I admired, stuff that made sense but didn't yet have a place in my workflow. Then I started using ChatGPT to externalize my thoughts. I started using Notion to organize them, and suddenly, those ideas weren't theoretical anymore. The extended mind wasn't a metaphor, it was a survival mechanism. The second brain wasn't a system, it was the only way to keep track of all the insights I was suddenly surfacing. And when I layered in tools like Avoma and Fireflies.ai, recording meetings, transcribing thoughts, surfacing patterns, I wasn't dabbling anymore. I was looping, I was thinking outside my head, and I was building systems that grew with me. That's why these three pillars made the cut. Not because they're trendy, but because they've held up under real pressure, because they've earned their place in my life. The mind grows by adding structure, not noise. When I first started working with clients, I was constantly trying to remember everything. Client goals, to-dos, articles I wanted to send them, comments from past meetings. I was juggling all of this in my head and barely staying afloat. I didn't realize then that the problem wasn't me. It was the system I didn't have. That's what this chapter is about, building a system that supports how you actually think. One that doesn't fall apart when life gets messy, one that improves as you use it. So here they are. The three pillars of Digital Kaizen. Pillar 1, the extended mind. When thought overwhelms the mind uses the world. Barbara Tversky. The first thing to understand is this. Your brain isn't the only place where thinking happens. In fact, some of your best thinking probably happens when you're on a walk, in the shower, talking with someone, or scribbling on a whiteboard. This isn't magic, it's what Annie Murphy Paul popularized as the extended mind, building on the research of philosophers Andy Clark and David Chalmers. The core idea is simple but radical. Thinking isn't confined to your brain. It's distributed through your body, tools, space, and relationships. How this shows up in daily life. With the body, gestures help us clarify ideas. Movement, like walking or pacing, improves problem solving. Even gut feelings carry intelligence. With the environment, a cluttered space clutters your mind. A clear space or tool, like a whiteboard or mind map, lightens cognitive load. With people, thought becomes clearer in dialogue. Explaining a concept often reveals what we didn't know. In the Digital Kaizen system, we design for these insights. We speak voice notes while walking instead of forcing ideas into boxes. We treat our workspaces like collaborators, not backdrops. We reflect with AI not to replace thinking, but to extend it. The takeaway, don't think harder, think wider. Build environments, physical, digital, relational, that do some of the thinking with you. Pillar 2, the second brain. Your brain is for having ideas, not for holding them. Tiago Forte. Let's talk about memory, specifically the kind that fails at the worst times. The reality is, your working memory has a limit. Studies show we can hold about 4 to 7 pieces of information at a time. Beyond that, we start dropping balls. And yet most of us try to juggle our entire lives in our heads. This is where the concept of the second brain comes in. Popularized by Tiago Forte and grounded in systems like the Zettelkasten method and digital PKM, personal knowledge management, the second brain is a place to store what matters, so you can return to it when it matters most. But in Digital Kaizen, the second brain isn't just storage, it's a living, breathing feedback system. How this becomes practical. Voice memos instead of half-baked notes. Fireflies.ai, Otter, or Descript to capture client meetings or strategy sessions. Notion or Google Docs as an idea inbox. Raw, unsorted, searchable. And here's where it gets powerful. AI. Today's tools don't just store data, they synthesize it. You can ask ChatGPT, what themes came up in last week's client meetings? Which ideas have I repeated over the past month? Pull 3 potential blog posts from this week's transcripts. Your second brain becomes more than storage. It becomes a creative engine, a pattern detector, a memory extension that gives you back the bandwidth to think. The takeaway: capture everything, organize lightly, let AI and weekly reviews surface insight over time. Pillar 3, Kaizen. Small improvements made consistently lead to big transformation. W. Edwards Deming paraphrased. Let's get honest for a second. The reason most productivity systems fail is because they're built for ideal days. And most of our days, they're not ideal. That's why Digital Kaizen rests on the Japanese philosophy of Kaizen, which means good change. Not big, not sexy, not flashy, just sustainable. In manufacturing, Kaizen was the engine behind Toyota's excellence, continuous improvement driven by frontline insight. In personal growth, it's the opposite of burnout culture. How Kaizen shows up in Digital Kaizen. A 45-second voice memo instead of a perfect journal entry. Reviewing your week in 10 minutes with AI assistance. Not fixing everything, just spotting the one thing that can improve. BJ Fogg's behavior model, B equals MAP, behavior equals motivation times dot. Ability times prompt shows us that when motivation is low, you lean on ability, and the easiest ability, tiny steps. Kaizen is what allows this system to survive your busy seasons, your foggy mornings, your unexpected life stuff. It's not about doing more, it's about doing a little, on purpose, every day. The takeaway: progress is better than perfection. Build a loop you can return to, not a checklist you'll abandon. How they work together. Each pillar solves a specific problem, but here's the kicker. The extended mind expands how you think. The second brain captures what you think. Kaizen drives when and how often you return to it. Together they form a loop, not a ladder. You're not climbing toward a fixed endpoint, you're evolving. Day by day, voice note by voice note. Lab loop, where ideas grow legs. A lot of this book didn't happen at my desk. Some of the clearest thinking came during evening walks with Heather and Alistair. Just the 3 of us circling the neighborhood after dinner. No agenda, no timer. Sometimes just me half talking to myself while they chimed in, or patiently let me think out loud. One night, I'd been deep in research about the extended mind, Annie Murphy-Paul, Clark and Chalmers, Barbara Tversky. Great stuff, but it still felt academic, disconnected. So I brought it up mid-walk. I said something like, it's wild how your body and environment are part of your thinking, but what does that really look like on a Tuesday night when you're trying to write a book and your brain's fried? Heather asked a simple question. Alistair cracked a joke. And somehow, in that little exchange, the idea sharpened. The fog lifted. I didn't take notes. I just talked. When we got home, I pulled out my phone and dropped a voice memo into Notion. A few days later, I was reviewing old memos with GPT, and that one popped up. It hit different. I saw the pattern. Walks plus voice plus loose conversation equals clarity. I took that insight, reshaped the paragraph, added a story, and suddenly that pillar wasn't just theory, it was alive. That's the loop. I didn't plan it, I just gave it room to breathe. And when I came back to it with fresh eyes and the right tool, the insight didn't just stick, it grew legs. Why this system is different. Plenty of people talk about Zettelkasten, or second brain, or Kaizen, but Digital Kaizen doesn't treat them as standalone ideas. It integrates them into a voice-first, AI-augmented, habit-grounded feedback loop that respects how real humans actually work and live. Here's what makes it unique. Voice-first capture, you think better out loud. This system honors that. AI as a reflection tool. You're not working for the tools. They work with you. Weekly loops instead of daily perfection. Growth isn't linear, it's iterative. Sustainable rhythm, not hustle. You don't burn out when the system flexes with you. This isn't just about notes or habits or productivity. It's about building a relationship with your thinking so you grow on purpose. What comes next? In the next 3 chapters, we're going to explore each of these pillars more deeply. Chapter 4. The Extended Mind. Design thinking environments that do some of the work for you. Chapter 5. The Second Brain. Build an external memory that reflects and activates insight. Chapter 6. Kaizen. Master the smallest lever of all, consistent motion. You don't have to master them overnight, you just have to loop. And that loop begins the moment you speak your first thought out loud. Chapter 4. The Extended Mind. Designing your thinking ecosystem. Most people assume that thinking starts and ends in the brain, but if you've ever had a great idea while walking or solved a problem mid-conversation, you know that's not entirely true. The truth is your mind is not limited to your head, and if you want to think better, you have to stop treating it like it is. The big idea, your mind isn't trapped in your skull. The concept of the extended mind was first introduced by philosophers Andy Clark and David Chalmers, and later brought into mainstream awareness by science journalist Annie Murphy Paul. Their collective argument, backed by a growing body of cognitive science, is this: your brain is not a sealed processor, it's one part of a broader thinking system that includes your body, your space, your tools, and your relationships. This isn't poetry, it's research-backed, rigorously studied science. In fact, the more you understand how your thinking naturally extends into the world, the more you can design your life to support better decisions, deeper creativity, and less burnout. And in the context of Digital Kaizen, this is the first pillar of the loop. Let's break it down into 4 major extensions of thought and how to make them work for you. 1. Embodied cognition. Think with the body. When we talk about gut feelings, most of us treat that like intuition or emotion. But neuroscience tells us it's real data. What the science says. Interoception, your body's ability to sense internal signals, is a legitimate form of preconscious insight. Gesture-based learning helps people solve math problems, articulate abstract concepts, and even retain vocabulary. Walking boosts divergent thinking, which is the kind of creativity needed for brainstorming and problem solving. Movement is not a break from thinking, it's a mode of it. Annie Murphy Paul. When my body thinks better than my brain. I've noticed something over and over in my life, especially when I'm stuck on a problem. Movement helps. Sometimes it's jujitsu, sometimes a jog, sometimes just walking around the block. With jujitsu, the effect is intense. Your heart rate spikes, your awareness sharpens, and for a few minutes, your brain stops spinning out about work or deadlines. You're too busy being in the moment. But honestly, I get the same clarity from simpler things too. When I'm walking, something shifts. My mental pace changes. The stuckness unknots itself. Not because I brute forced it, but because I changed state. That's the power of motion. It's not just stress relief. It's thinking fuel. And it's not just anecdotal. The research on embodied cognition, walking meetings, and kinetic learning backs this up. Sometimes the fastest way to think better is to stop trying so hard to think and start moving instead. Thinking ALTR, across locations, tools, and rhythms. People think focus is about forcing your brain to behave, but often it's about setting up the world around you so your brain doesn't have to work so hard. For me, that means having setups that match how I think best. At the office, I've got what I call the command center, a laptop dead center. One monitor on each side, a teleprompter in the middle, shout out to Elgato, a clicky tactical keyboard that sounds like an old typewriter having a good day, a real mouse, 20 plus tabs open at all times, which I'll admit is chaotic, but it works for me. At home, it's a similar setup, but on a standing desk. 2 monitors flank the laptop. The desk lets me shift from sitting to standing. The chair rocks a little, on purpose. It's made for folks with ADHD, which I relate to. Movement helps me concentrate. And I do a lot of my thinking while driving. Not on calls, not listening to podcasts, just driving, letting the road and the rhythm clear out the noise in my head. What I've learned is this: my best thinking doesn't always happen at a desk. It happens in rhythm, in motion, in environments that match the way my mind works. That's what it means to think ALTR, across locations, tools, and rhythms. It's not about the perfect setup. It's about the repeatable, sustainable, soul-aligned one. In practice, record your voice notes while walking. Let motion unlock momentum. Don't dismiss fidgeting, doodling, or pacing. These may be how your mind gets traction. Pay attention to where you feel resistance. Your body often senses friction before your thoughts do. Digital Kaizen move. Try motion-based reflection at the end of your day. Go for a walk and talk through your wins, tensions, and insights. 2. Environmental scaffolding. Think with your space. Your environment doesn't just influence your mood, it sculpts your cognition. What the science says, attention restoration theory shows that natural environments, like parks or open sky, restore cognitive clarity better than urban ones. Clutter increases cognitive load. You're not just distracted by the mess, you're mentally tracking it. Spatial cues aid memory. The way you physically place tools or notes affects how your brain organizes ideas. In practice, use visual organization tools like whiteboards, sticky notes, or analog mind maps. Step outside when you're mentally stuck. Even 5 minutes in nature can reduce mental noise. Rearrange your workspace to match the type of thinking you're doing, standing for quick problem solving, sitting for deeper focus. Digital Kaizen move. Create a thinking altar, not a religious one, a cognitive one, a physical space that invites clarity. One notebook, one pen, one prompt, one voice app ready to record. 3. Cognitive offloading. Think with external tools. You can only juggle so many thoughts. Research says it's around 4 to 7 pieces of information at once. After that, you drop things, you spiral, you forget. What the science says, working memory is limited. Once overloaded, your brain defaults to anxiety and distraction. Offloading frees up bandwidth. Writing, drawing, or recording ideas relieves your mind from trying to hold it all. The production effect shows we remember more when we say things out loud or write them ourselves. Your notebook is not a luxury, it's a prosthetic for your mind. In practice, keep a notebook or voice memo app within arm's reach at all times. Don't worry about organizing everything perfectly. Messy externalization beats perfect internalization. Use Descript or Notion AI to help surface your thoughts after the fact, not during capture. Digital Kaizen move. Create an idea compost bin, a document or folder where every half-baked thought lives. No pressure, no judgment. AI or your future self can mine it later. 4. Socially distributed cognition. Think with people. We're wired to think in dialogue. We process faster, retain longer, and understand more deeply when we talk with others. What the science says, transactive memory. Groups remember more collectively than individuals do alone. Teaching reinforces learning. Explaining a concept out loud cements understanding better than reading or listening. Social reflection improves decision-making and builds insight. Sometimes your best thinking shows up in someone else's voice. In practice, share your reflections weekly with a thinking partner or a voice assistant like ChatGPT. Record your spoken thoughts, then play them back. You'll hear them differently. Talk through your struggles with a friend or coach. Insight doesn't just land, it's surfaced through dialogue. Digital Kaizen move. Add explaining to someone else as your final step in reflection. Even if it's a 90-second voice note to yourself, this activates learning and memory. Lab loop, the abandoned house. We walk the same loop most evenings, me, Heather, and Alistair. Sometimes we talk about our day, sometimes we just listen to the crickets, but every time we pass that house, something happens. It's clearly abandoned, the lawn's overgrown, the mailbox leans like it's tired, curtains haven't moved in months, no lights, no cars, just stillness. We don't know the story, but we've started making one up. Every time we pass it, we slip back into the same mystery, like detectives trying to piece together what happened. Did someone pass away? Were there no heirs? Is the HOA keeping it barely breathing? It always starts casually, but before long, we're deep in a brainstorm, not about the house itself, but what it means, what it could represent. A whole fictional backstory emerges. We slow our pace, the rhythm changes. One of us throws out a wild idea, another reshapes it. Alistair adds a twist from a show he's watching, and then, somewhere in the middle of this made-up story, a real insight lands. Something about grief, or memory, or systems falling apart when no one's watching. It's never planned, never forced, but it's some of our best thinking. And when I look back, it's not just the content of those conversations that matters, it's how they happen in motion, in dialogue, triggered by the same external cue in our environment again and again. That house is like a bookmark in our shared cognition, a little doorway into deeper thinking. That's what Annie Murphy Paul means when she talks about the extended mind. We weren't thinking harder in those moments. We were thinking wider with our feet, our senses, our surroundings, and each other. That's the magic, not just in what we said, but in where and how we said it. How to apply extended mind thinking in Digital Kaizen. Let's pull it all together. Create thinking routines that move. Walk while you talk. Use gestures while problem solving. Stretch or stand to shift cognitive gears. Design environments that reduce friction. Eliminate visual clutter where you focus. Use physical tools to make thoughts visible. Step outside when your brain locks up. Externalize before you overanalyze. Dump thoughts fast, don't filter. Use tools like Descript, Fireflies.ai, or Scribe to capture meetings or brainstorms. Review later with AI to extract themes and surprises. Make thinking social, not solitary. Host a thinking buddy walk or call once a week. Let AI play the role of your conversational partner. Use storytelling and out loud thinking to generate clarity. The real payoff, a mind that works with the world. When you apply the extended mind in your digital Kaizen system, you stop trying to grind harder, you stop fighting your brain's limits, and you start designing a world that does some of the work with you. Your body becomes a sensor, your tools become memory, your spaces become teachers, your people become mirrors. This isn't just a better way to think, it's a smarter way to live. Final takeaway. Don't think harder, think wider. Your mind doesn't live in isolation, neither should your system. Chapter 5. The second brain. Store it so you can see it. See it so you can use it. Use it so you can grow. Why your brain isn't built for modern life. Let's start with a truth that takes the pressure off. Your brain is a brilliant idea generator, but a terrible storage unit. It was designed for tracking animal trails and remembering where you buried the winter food, not juggling 12 browser tabs, 4 client calls, and the story your kid told you on the ride to school. We're living in a cognitive environment our ancestors couldn't have dreamed of. And while your brain is adaptable, it's not built for the volume of information we now expect it to hold. That's not a character flaw. That's biology. It's also why you need a second brain. What is a second brain? A second brain is a trusted external system that holds your thoughts, insights, references, and to-dos so your real brain can breathe. The term was popularized by Tiago Forte, but the philosophy behind it has deep roots. Think, commonplace books, Zettelkasten, and even index cards and shoeboxes. The modern second brain, though, is something different. It's searchable, flexible, and AI augmented. It's not just for remembering things, it's for thinking better. Why this matters, according to cognitive science. Let's break down what science tells us about why second brains work. 1. Working memory is limited. Research shows that you can only juggle 4 to 7 items in your short-term memory at once. Anything beyond that creates mental strain and decision fatigue. 2. Attention is a scarce resource. Our brains are wired to switch attention in high-stimulation environments. That's helpful for surviving predators, not so much for finishing a project or planning retirement. 3. Externalizing frees up space. Offloading ideas to a reliable system allows your biological brain to do what it does best: make connections, solve problems, and generate insights. In short, your second brain isn't a luxury, it's survival gear. Most of us don't struggle because we have too few ideas. We struggle because we don't have a system to hold them, and without that system, they vanish. The Knowledge Graveyard, with apologies to Allen Ginsberg. I saw the best ideas of my mind destroyed by distraction, starved, hysterical, naked, dragging themselves through inboxes at dawn, looking for a decent folder. We've all got one. A knowledge graveyard, it's the place where all your best ideas go to die, unrecorded, unsorted, and unretrievable. Brilliant thoughts whispered in the shower, breakthroughs scribbled on napkins, insights spoken in traffic and never voiced again. You swear you'll remember them. You won't. It's like that moment when you walk into a room and forget why you're there. But instead of forgetting a task, you're forgetting your next big idea. The thing that could have changed your project, your pitch, your direction, and worse, you remember that you forgot it, which somehow stings even more. I've had conversations where I'll say, "Wait, I had something great to tell you. It was brilliant. Hang on." "Ah, never mind, it's gone." And maybe it wasn't that brilliant, or maybe it was. We'll never know. That's the tragedy of the graveyard. The good news, it's avoidable. You don't need a perfect system. You just need to catch it while it's alive. That's where the loop comes in. That's why the second brain matters. Not to hoard everything, but to rescue what matters before it disappears. Capture system overkill, or how I lost a whole podcast to OneNote. Before Notion, before Fireflies.ai, before Tiago Forte made the second brain a movement, I was already down the rabbit hole. I started using OneNote as soon as it dropped. It felt powerful, flexible, and like the future of thinking, and in many ways, it was. But I learned the hard way. Flexibility doesn't equal resilience. I was pouring ideas into OneNote. Client notes, project ideas, podcast seeds, voice note transcriptions. It felt like I was building something real. And then I changed emails. The Microsoft account I had linked to OneNote was locked out. And just like that, all of it, everything I'd stored was trapped in a digital tomb. Not deleted, but effectively gone. This wasn't new for me. Before that, I'd been using physical trays inspired by David Allen's Getting Things Done. Do it tray, delegate it tray, destroy it tray, real folders, real paper, real systems. And like every system I'd tried before, it eventually buckled under its own complexity or my own inconsistency. That's what capture system overkill looks like. When you've tried so many systems that your actual ideas are scattered across platforms, locked behind passwords, buried in digital limbo, it's the opposite of a second brain. It's a thinking junkyard. The tools didn't fail me, but my lack of a loop did. The 1% win that changed everything. Before Kaizen was a philosophy for me, it was a survival strategy. In high school and middle school, my brain was all over the place. I didn't have systems. I didn't have structure. I was just reacting to whatever was loudest or latest. But when I got to college, studying, working, trying to balance family life, I had to figure something out. And the first thing that made a real difference, a to-do list. That was it. Just the act of taking something out of my head and putting it on paper, or a Post-it, or a whiteboard, gave me clarity I hadn't had before. It sounds small. It is small. But it was huge for me. I remember reading the Checklist Manifesto around that time. Atul Gawande talked about how even experienced surgeons rely on simple checklists before going into surgery, because when the stakes are high and the pressure's on, structure saves lives. That hit me hard. I wasn't doing surgery, obviously, but I was trying to keep a life together. And for me, a checklist became a kind of mental lifeline. It didn't solve everything, but it started everything. That's what a 1% win looks like. The loop I never finished. When Microsoft released OneNote, I was in. It felt like the future of personal knowledge, a place for everything: notes, projects, ideas, voice memos, checklists, strategy drafts, early podcast material. I started dumping everything in there. I was excited, I was organized, I was all in. And then life happened and I changed platforms. I lost the habit, the inbox overflowed, and OneNote became something else, a graveyard. Somewhere in there are partial drafts of a book on financial literacy I never finished. A few chapters of a retirement-focused project that never quite made it. Seeds of real ideas, things that mattered to me, still buried in those digital notebooks. I can still access them, but I never built the loop to bring them back. And that's the part that stings. This isn't just about OneNote. I've used Franklin planners, bullet journals, Stephen Covey systems. I've run the full productivity gauntlet. But one thing I learned early and forgot too often is this: if you don't have a place for things to go, you'll lose them. But if you don't have a way to return, they might as well be gone. Now I'm ruthless about one thing: one capture system, one calendar, one loop, not because it's pretty, but because it's livable. Lab loop. The morning I almost lost a client insight. There was this moment that still sticks with me, not because of how it ended, but because of what it almost cost. I had just wrapped a client roadmap session. Tons of value came out of it. Tax implications, Medicare timing, even a great moment where they had an aha about spousal survivor benefits. But the minute the call ended, I got pulled into something else, a compliance email, a rescheduled appointment, some random tech issue, life basically. A few hours later, I remembered the conversation, but not the key takeaway I wanted to share in my follow-up email. I sat there racking my brain. What was the metaphor I used that made them light up? Was it the income floor example? No, it was something else. That's when I realized I had recorded it, but I hadn't tagged it. I hadn't run it through ChatGPT yet. No summary, no highlights, no loop. It was all there, but it was buried. Eventually, I found the phrase, "Don't build your retirement on hope. Build it on math." They loved that line. That's what hit. That's what shifted their thinking. And that's what I ended up using in the follow-up, the podcast, and even a future webinar. But here's the thing, I almost lost it. Not because I didn't say it, but because I didn't capture it intentionally. That was the moment I stopped seeing my second brain as storage and started seeing it as a rescue system. Now, I don't just record meetings, I tag them immediately, summarize them weekly, and run them through my AI stack. I let ChatGPT surface what I missed, because otherwise those moments vanish. It's not about hoarding data. It's about catching lightning before it disappears. The ideas that matter deserve more than storage. They deserve a second chance, and that only happens if the system loops. That's why this next part matters. Not because we need to capture everything, but because we need to make sure what matters doesn't slip through the cracks. Let's talk about how to set up a second brain that feels like a partner, not another inbox. The 4 roles of a second brain. In the Digital Kaizen system, your second brain has one job: turn information into leverage. Here's how it works. Capture the moment so it doesn't slip away. Organize it just enough to find it later. Distill the value so it's useful on demand. Express it out in conversations, content, or decisions. This is where the CODE framework comes in. The code framework turned notes into wisdom. Tiago Forte's code model is foundational for Digital Kaizen's second brain pillar. Think of it as a loop: capture, organize, distill, express. Capture. Save what resonates: voice notes, ideas, quotes, action items, client questions, recurring thoughts. Don't filter too early. Capture is about raw material. Organize. Use PARA, projects, areas, resources, archives, or a simpler 3-bucket method. Now remember later. Keep it light. Your brain needs a scaffold, not a cage. Distill. This is where 80% of the value gets created. Highlight the one quote that matters in a transcript. Add a one-line takeaway to an article. Summarize a client insight in 3 words. Express. This is what activates learning, memory, and clarity. Use it in client advice. Write a post. Record a podcast. Feed it to your AI assistant to generate next steps. Expression is not output, it's insight made visible. How Digital Kaizen makes it smarter. Most people stop at storage. That's where Digital Kaizen takes it further. Weekly voice reflections captured on the go. AI-generated summaries of meetings, memos, or dreams. Prompted insight reviews using tools like Fireflies.ai or ChatGPT. You don't just save things, you loop them back. This makes your second brain not just searchable, but self-improving. Where most systems break. Here's where people stall. Which tool should I use? Should I tag by project or by theme? Is Notion better than Obsidian? I need to clean everything up before I can start using it. None of that matters. A messy second brain that's used is more powerful than a pristine one that's abandoned. Perfection is friction. Start simple. 1 inbox, 1 weekly review, 1 habit of expression. That's enough. Second brain plus AI equals your thinking partner. Now we hit the upgrade button. With modern tools like ChatGPT, Notion AI, Fireflies.ai, or Descript, your second brain becomes interactive. What your AI can do: summarize long-form voice notes into clear takeaways, surface recurring themes across client meetings, draft proposals using your past notes and insights, Track the evolution of your thinking over time. AI doesn't replace reflection, it accelerates it. The real magic of a second brain is when it starts showing you things you didn't even know you knew. How to start your second brain today. No excuses, no software debates. Here's the path. Step 1, pick a capture method. Voice notes, fireflies.ai, Otter, phone recorder. Quick notes, Apple Notes, Notion, Google Keep, handwritten, journal, whiteboard, index cards. Step 2, create 3 buckets, now, projects, or notes in active use. Remember, ideas or insights worth saving, later, everything else. Step 3, start a weekly review ritual. Every Friday or Sunday, ask, what did I learn this week? What insight did I repeat? What needs to be actioned or shared? Step 4, reflect with AI. Feed a meeting, memo, or journal entry to ChatGPT. Ask, what's the core theme here? What idea shows up more than once? Draft a next step based on this note. The real payoff, a mirror, not a filing cabinet. A great second brain doesn't just help you remember more, it helps you recognize yourself. Over time, it becomes a map of your evolving beliefs, a searchable trail of insights, a living history of your thoughts and growth. You'll stop repeating yourself. You'll notice patterns faster. You'll make better decisions sooner. That's not just productivity, that's wisdom. Final takeaway. Don't build a second brain to store more. Build one so you can see more, then loop it, trust it, and let it think with you. Chapter 6, Kaizen. The smallest step is the most powerful one. We've all been there. You decide it's time to make a change. New journal, new apps, new systems. You light the motivational fire, sprint into Monday like a machine, and by Thursday, you're burned out, behind, and discouraged. The problem isn't you. The problem is thinking change needs to be big to be meaningful. Kaizen flips that idea on its head. Instead of transformation through intensity, Kaizen teaches change through iteration. Tiny shifts, low friction moves, progress that sneaks past your brain's resistance and earns your trust over time. What is Kaizen, really? At its core, Kaizen is a Japanese word meaning good change or continuous improvement. It first gained traction in post-World War II Japan through the Toyota production system, where engineers and factory workers were empowered to identify and implement small daily improvements. Over time, these tweaks compounded into industry-defining breakthroughs. The cycle was formalized by W. Edwards Deming through what's now known as the PDCA loop: plan, do, check, act. But the philosophy spread far beyond the factory floor. Into software, agile, into productivity, habit stacking, into behavioral science, tiny habits, into coaching, parenting, leadership, and now, Digital Kaizen. Because here's the truth, Kaizen isn't about speed, it's about rhythm, not hustle, but harmony. Why big change breaks you and small change builds you. Let's ground this in human psychology. Most people don't fail to grow because they lack ambition. They fail because they overload the system. Here's what usually happens. You create a big goal. You try to change 5 things at once. You rely on motivation, which fades. You get overwhelmed. You quit and feel worse than before. Kaizen removes the overload by shrinking the ask. You lower the resistance, and in doing so, you raise the success rate. Kaizen example moves: 1 breath of meditation, not 10 minutes. 1 sentence journal, not a full reflection. 1 voice memo insight, not a polished report. 1 tag in your second brain, not a full para build. 1 AI automation, not a full Zapier network. They seem trivial, but done repeatedly, they build capacity. The science of small. Psychologists like B.J. Fogg and James Clear have shown that habit change succeeds not by discipline, but by design. Fogg's behavior model: behavior equals motivation times ability times prompt. What does that mean? If your motivation drops, and it will, the only thing that keeps you going is ability, the ease of doing the task. The easier it is, the more likely you'll do it again. And that repetition builds identity, trust, and momentum. The compound effect. Let's get mathematical for a moment. If you improve by 1% each day for a year, you don't end up 365% better. You end up 3,700% better. That's 37 times growth. And it's not just poetic, it's exponential math. This was the exact strategy that led to the turnaround of British cycling. Under coach Dave Brailsford, they didn't try to win the Tour de France overnight. They improved tire pressure, cleaned their seats better, optimized sleep and nutrition. Marginal gains across the board, years of small upgrades, dominance. I have a client whose mother-in-law was a librarian. Modest income, frugal lifestyle, no flash. Every Friday, the family would go out to eat, and she made them pick up the bill. It became a running joke, but also just understood. That was her rhythm. When she passed away, they discovered she had saved over $1 million. No lottery wins, no big inheritance, just discipline. Quiet, unshakable discipline. She lived with intention. She let small habits work in the background for decades. She knew the value of every dollar, not because she was cheap, but because she was focused. That story has stuck with me for years because that's what Kaizen really looks like in the wild. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it works. $1 million outcome, built one frugal Friday at a time. Now imagine that in your own life. One client insight you might have missed, one habit that compounds into consistency, one decision that prevents a regret. Kaizen gives you a system that doesn't need to spike, it just needs to continue. Kaizen inside the Digital Kaizen loop. This isn't theory. Kaizen is the engine that powers everything we're building here. Here's how it plays out in your system. Each loop is a micro upgrade. Your weekly review is the reflection space. The next week is the adjustment opportunity. We don't overhaul, we tune, we don't rebuild, we refine. What's the next smallest thing that would move this forward? That's your next Kaizen move. It might not feel powerful in the moment, but feelings lie and math doesn't. The PDCA loop, plan, do, check, act. This is the operational backbone of Kaizen, and it lines up seamlessly with how Digital Kaizen works. Plan, choose one small improvement, e.g. record voice, note after each meeting. Do, try it today, not perfectly, just enough to feel the move. Check, look back at your week. Did it help? Did it happen? Act, adjust or double down, then begin again. It's a micro upgrade to mirror the micro action philosophy. Double down, adjust slightly or let it go. Then move to the next loop. One small loop, one tiny tweak every week. This is how the system grows with you, not against you. Why Kaizen wins when perfectionism loses. Here's a table that captures the contrast. Lab loop, the 2-minute shift that changed more than my office. It started as a micro habit. Just 2 minutes, clean the office, that was it. And I'd finish up for the day, look around at the post-meeting clutter, notes, pens, mugs, and tell myself, just 2 minutes, clear what you can. It wasn't about perfection, just motion. A signal to my brain that the day was done and it was safe to exhale. At first, it barely made a dent, but then I noticed I felt less scattered when I walked in the next morning. There was less visual noise, less friction to getting started. I was calmer, more focused, and oddly enough, kinder to myself. Then something funny happened. One night, without thinking, I wiped off the top of my dresser before bed. No big deal, just a quick sweep. Same 2-minute rule. Heather saw it and did a double take. Wait, you cleaned the dresser? And I realized this wasn't just about tidiness. It was a ripple effect. That 2-minute practice had started to spill over into places I didn't even connect. The habit wasn't staying in the office, it was changing how I moved through the rest of my life. That's the quiet power of Kaizen. You don't always notice it in the moment, but it builds. 2 minutes today becomes a rhythm tomorrow, and sometimes that rhythm surprises the people closest to you, and even yourself. Kaizen doesn't demand belief in a future version of you. It lets you earn belief through action. And that action becomes self-reinforcing. Practical Kaizen and Digital Kaizen in your capture. One voice memo after a call, don't overthink the summary. One phrase from a podcast, not the whole transcript. Start messy, finish later. Let I help you distill. In your organization, add one new folder, not a full migration. Rename one tag to make more sense. Let structure evolve from use, not design. In your review, highlight one quote from last week's insights. Ask, what's 1% better than last week? Use fireflies.ai or ChatGPT to find recurring themes. In your AI loop, improve one prompt, Automate one task, e.g., transcription, summary, scheduling. Build a voice shortcut, e.g., send this to my second brain. Real world Kaizen, what it looks like. In my own practice, I've seen this over and over. And clients don't succeed because they change everything overnight. They succeed because they make one slightly better decision each week, one small increase in their savings rate, one honest conversation with a spouse about legacy, one shift in language from someday to this week. That's Kaizen. It's not glamorous, but it's durable. Big breakthroughs feel good, but small wins feel doable, and doable wins are the ones that stick. Final thought. Kaizen is your invisible engine. You won't get a dopamine hit from checking off a micro habit, but weeks from now, months from now, you'll look back and notice you're calmer, you're sharper, you're better, not because you optimized your life, but because you kept showing up. You don't have to fix everything, you just have to fix the next thing. Then come back next week and do it again. That's not optimization. That's evolution. No new app or system saved me. 2 minutes of progress did, and it still does. That brings us to the end of part 1. If this section felt less like instruction and more like recognition, that was intentional. Clarity doesn't start with solutions. It starts with seeing the problem clearly, without judgment and without rushing to fix it. In part 1, we didn't try to optimize anything. We didn't add tools. We didn't build systems. We simply named the patterns that make modern work feel heavier than it should. If you notice yourself thinking, that's me, or I felt that before, you're exactly where you need to be. In the next part, we'll be turning awareness into structure. We'll talk about how to capture ideas before they disappear, how to reduce mental overload, and how to build an external system that works with your brain instead of against it. When you're ready, continue on to part 2.